World of Warcraft has seen some very dark times. Content droughts, design fiascos, scandals, systems too complex for their own good, and radio silence as community engagement hits an all-time low. And now Final Fantasy XIV and other competitors are closing in. But I don't think this has to be the end of the story for World of Warcraft. What World of Warcraft needs is simpler systems, more content, better community engagement so that the dev teams know what will get players excited to pick up World of Warcraft again. To that end, I have invented a system of my own, a simple system that gives players huge amounts of customization, that lets developers add awesome and useful abilities without fear of spellbar bloat, giving players the ability to upgrade 3 of their spells to be something new. I'm cooking up concepts for 7 of these upgrade spells for every spec. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are brand new. Either way, Blizzard has my express permission to use every concept I post about in these videos in the comments or on the forums. And if the Blizzard developers are too pressed for time to engage with the community, then I will. I'll get the feedback on this concept, and even if they don't take a single one of my ideas, they'll know what the players want, and most importantly, why. And they can use that to make the game better, because I want this game better. I want WoW to last another decade. Well, here we are at the Demonology spec. It was the 3rd Warlock spec that I cooked up upgrades for, and after the absolute struggle that was Affliction, and the comedy of errors that was Destruction, Demonology felt like a breath of fresh air. Of course, how easy things felt for me at the time, and how much you like what you see are not necessarily related. Demonology Warlock players have forgotten more than I'll ever know about their spec. And while I made every effort to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins, I know there's going to be nuances and gotchas that I won't catch on my own. I'm counting on player feedback to catch them for me, and I have every intention of iterating based on feedback. So without further ado, let's dive into the upgrades so you can judge them for yourselves. First, we have Chain Darkness, an upgrade for Shadowbolt that deals damage to multiple targets, has no cooldown, and generates a soul shard. Second, we have Hand of Ebonlock, an upgrade for Hand of Gul'dan that deals damage to a single target, but summons the same number of imps and the same soul shard cost. The third upgrade is Hellfire, an upgrade for Corruption that causes 30% of the damage dealt by your demons to be redistributed to all nearby targets as Shadow Flame damage, while also doing a small amount of fire damage over time. This has no effect if the enemy is alone. The fourth upgrade is Compel Dreadstalkers, an upgrade for Summon Dreadstalkers that costs 3 soul shards and summons 3 Dreadstalkers instead of 2. Shadow Flame Infusion is the 5th upgrade, which is an upgrade for Demon Bolt. It's got a 1.5 second cast time and a 10 second cooldown. Demonic Core stacks cause Shadow Flame Infusion not to incur its own cooldown after casting, or if it's already on cooldown, it will instantly refresh the cooldown. This spell generates 2 soul shards and deals Shadow Flame damage over time. The 6th upgrade is Ritual of Empowerment, an upgrade for Summon Demonic Tyrant that has the same cooldown and the same cast time, and it prolongs the duration of your lesser demons by 15 seconds, but it empowers your damage and your other's demons' damage by a larger percentage, also causing your mastery to count you as a demon for the duration of the ritual. Finally, we have Demonic Breath, an upgrade for Shadow Fury that blasts targets in front of you away and slows them by 50%. The Thinking. Much like Affliction, I saw fewer abilities that I liked, and of them, only a handful actually dealt any multi-target damage, some of which were already part of your normal rotation anyway. That was a golden opportunity for me to add Chain Darkness, of course. I actually tried to get Chain Darkness into all 3 specs, but couldn't for Affliction because of Drained Soul, and I strongly suspect I couldn't for Destruction because, well, does Incinerate replace Shadowbolt? If it does, I sure wish Wowhead had told me that it did in so many words. In any case, I didn't want to add too many upgrades that went from single target to multi-target in Demonology spread. There needs to be some variety here. That being said, It was obvious that a few of these upgrades needed to be about multi-target damage, and I saw a chance to give Corruption a place in your rotation and bring back Hellfire at the same time. Fun fact, for a while I was going to give the Corruption upgrade for Destruction, again, assuming Corruption was an actual thing for Destruction, but I was going to give it the name Fell Fountain. Then I realized what I could do with the name Hellfire, the name of an old multi-target Warlock spell from Vanilla, and boom! Instant comeback, albeit in a completely different form. And then I realized the Hellfire in Demonology and the Hellfire in Destruction were very different and switched the Hellfire in Destruction spread to Burning Embers because why not? I also picked a single target over multi-target upgrade with Hand of Ebonlock. I wanted to pick another Warlock's name from the lore instead of Gul'dan, and Ebonlock is the one I found on Wowpedia. Compel Dreadstalkers was meant to provide some extra Demon Core procs and change the rotation by requiring more resources to cast, though I wonder if that was even a good idea since Hand of Gul'dan already costs 3 shards, or can. If this was a bad trade-off, well, you know what I'm going to say, please do let me know. I also worry a bit about overcapping on Demon Core procs. Which brings me to what I did with Shadow Flame Infusion. I had wanted to experiment with an upgrade that, instead of taking a spell you'd normally not cast that procs can make usable, instead turning that spell into a given part of your normal rotation that procs can let you use more often. That's why I took the 4-second cast time and made it 1.5 seconds, and added the cooldown reset effect on Demonic Core. I could use some feedback on this concept. I decided to try upgrading Summon Demonic Tyrant when I saw that I was running low on things I could upgrade. Plus, I really wanted to bring back the old Demon Bolt icon. It looks like, I don't know, a circuit diagram from an H.P. Lovecraft spin-off. I suppose liking an icon is a pretty petty reason to do anything, but the idea is to directly upgrade your own damage as well as your pets as a trade-off for no longer having a big bad demon wailing on your target. Demonic Breath was a gimme. It was a copy from the other 2 specs. Now, when I started out with these upgrade concepts, I went ability by ability, not purpose by purpose, if you see what I mean. I asked myself, which abilities exist in this specs kit that I can give an upgrade to? And when I created upgrades based on which abilities I could upgrade, I often aimed for something that I thought looked or sounded cool. Almost always I wanted the upgraded ability to feel at least a little bit different from the original. Often I tried to create some kind of trade-off, making the upgrade situationally useful based on things like the number of targets affected or having a stronger effect with a longer cooldown, things like that. Rarely did I upgrade the same ability more than once for the same spec, but while I was putting together each spread of upgrades, what I didn't do, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, was to figure out what goals a player would have while they're looking at a list of upgrades, and then make sure upgrades exist in the spread that allow the player to pick upgrades that help them achieve those goals. In my next iteration, I plan to have that design goal in mind, to consider what the player wants to accomplish and how they could accomplish it with the upgrades. I strongly suspect that in this next iteration, there will be a lot more cases where I upgrade the same ability in 2 or more different ways. That will give players more options, and since that's going to be the goal with goal-oriented design, who knows? I might even have 3 different upgrades for the same ability in the end. However, I can do this much more effectively in an environment that has a great deal of feedback available, and that's where you come in. You have knowledge that comes from experience with these specs. I don't. I tried to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins for each spec, but inevitably there'll be things you know that I don't because you have experience that I don't have. You'll have more and better ideas than I could hope to have, and I know I need those, so please, let me know what you think of these upgrades and what better ideas you have for what to put in their places. Now, let's see how I did with Demonology when it comes to how a player could actually use these upgrades to buff single target or multi-target damage. Well, for single target, there's Hand of Ebonlock, Shadow Flame Infusion, maybe Compel Dreadstalkers, and Ritual Empowerment has potential. I guess there's some Sustain versus Burst options in there, which has its positive aspects. assuming that Compelled Dreadstalkers and Hand of Ebonlock aren't mutually exclusive due to shard spending. I need some feedback on that. As for multi-target, Chain Darkness and Hellfire are buffs. After that, Ritual of Empowerment is about all that helps, but I don't know, maybe that's enough. So, maybe I did okay with this first iteration. I definitely have my doubts about what I've done for Destruction and especially Affliction, but maybe things aren't so bad with Demonology. Really, though, Demonology players should be the ones who decide. Even if this is a good spread, that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. I fully intend to iterate, even on upgrade spreads that I feel good about. After all, my feelings are not relevant compared to what players want who actually play these specs. And the odds of an experienced player of any spec coming up with better ideas than a player who hasn't even tried the spec is, let's face it, very high indeed. And I've barely ever gone outside of my Holy Paladin comfort zone in the last decade and a half, so I know where I stand in that comparison. Feedback and ideas are, as always, appreciated. Warlocks were a tough class to cook up upgrades for. I figure there's no way I didn't make some big mistakes with my first iterations. My options were often limited, and given how important the Soul Shard resources are for all three specs, any tinkering I did with consuming or producing them is a known risk. Feedback would be much appreciated. I'm prepared to change anything and everything here. The more you can tell me about the wherefore and why of any change you want, the better. Hopefully the feedback won't end up in a scenario where I want specifics and get generalities, or even worse, where I genuinely need to think in terms of generalities when I want to think about specifics. Ugh. I guess Blizzard has been in that situation before, where they send out surveys that have really specific questions, but the questions themselves show that Blizzard isn't even thinking along the same lines we're thinking. Like, those questions are super specific, but don't address the problems we want them to address. I worry I might do the same thing, which is one of the reasons why I keep talking about what the heck I was thinking when I cooked these up. If and when I'm not even on the right track, players can guide my thinking in the right directions, so I can actually make something that looks cool, that would feel good to use in the game, and actually get players excited. I know I'm a novice at this, but if watching me take chances, make mistakes, and get messy with class design upgrades helps the overworked, understaffed, and underplayed Blizzard developers do something that makes the game better in the end, it'll all have been worth it. Of course, I know Blizzard probably won't take many, or even any of these suggestions. Heck, they might even have something objectively better in store for us than the semi-borrowed power upgrade system that I've cooked up here. But knowing what gets players excited will be helpful to them even so. That is why I'm sacrificing so much of my free time and energy on Project Decade. And who knows, they might just need these ideas to get WoW going in the right direction. Heck, if this video series just gets the Blizzard developers into the habit of creating a blue post with the thinking in it that goes in depth enough for us to understand what they're doing and what their design goals are, then that would be a huge step forward. Even saying the thinking out loud is sometimes enough to get you a new perspective on what you're doing. Is it really what people want? Does it serve the purposes that it really should be serving in the end? Am I really doing something just to make a system look awesome instead of making the game overall better? What does it do for the fun factor? Am I making the mistake of prioritizing my design goals over the fun factor? Are my design goals the right design goals to have? Do my ideas match the spec's feel and flavor? Is it a net gain? Is it genuinely awesome? Things like that. Plus, we just plain need more communication from Blizzard. If Project Decade gets the development team into the habit of telling us the thinking for every change they make, then the whole project will have been worth it, even if they don't take a single suggestion. Again, if you see something you don't like bad trade-offs or something you know is counterproductive or useless, or if you've thought of an idea that's better or cooler or more useful than mine, then don't hesitate to let me know. The more details you can provide about why you don't like it and what makes one of my ideas counterproductive or useless, or about why your idea is cooler or more useful than mine, the better. One of the main goals of Project Decade is to give whoever's in charge of class design and player power systems a good idea what appeals to players and what will actually get them excited to get back to WoW again. And the more you can say about the wherefore and the why, the better. I fully intend to iterate on this project and make changes in response to feedback. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've already seen mistakes in some of the things that I've done. But if those mistakes generate the kind of discussion that Blizzard needs to hear, so much the better. Blizzard needs to see player engagement, humility, and feedback actually making change in action so they can start doing what needs to be done to turn WoW around. It can be done and it should be done. World of Warcraft can last another decade. So keep the feedback coming, folks. There's one last thing. I began working on Project Decade videos back in July, and considering how many months it has taken, the fact that there are 36 different sets of feedback to curate and compile, and multitudes of decisions to make based on feedback received, ideas others have come up with, and how to weave everything together into a fun, functional, and exciting whole, I don't have a chance in the tramaculum of getting this done in any reasonable length of time unless I get volunteers to help me curate and compile the feedback I'm getting. If you're willing to help curate feedback, please let me know. If I get enough interest, I will set up a Discord server where we can coordinate everything. Thank you in advance for your feedback and support. Let's make World of Warcraft the best game that it can be.